Hi everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. On today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how I worked my sleeve horizontally on this beautiful honeycomb sweater. I'm going to actually saw this pattern on Yarn Cakes LLC. I hope I got that right. Anyways, I'm going to be sharing a link to our YouTube channel in the description box. So if you would like to make this sweater in this honeycomb pattern, just head on to our YouTube channel. She did a very good job of putting together a detailed explanation on how to actually work or make the sweater. So for me, I'm just here to show us how I was able to work my sleeve horizontally. Firstly, because I personally enjoy working the sleeve of my sweater from the body of the sweater. I love working on the sleeve attached to the body, but in the original video the sleeves were worked vertically and they were worked detached from the sweater. They were worked separately and then they were attached later on. But because as you can see, this sweater is a 3-color pattern sweater, and I worked the color pattern in the body horizontally, so there was no way I could achieve this color pattern by working the sleeves vertically. So I had to figure out how to work mine horizontally, while still being able to incorporate the honeycomb pattern on the sleeves. So for those who may have watched the full tutorial on how to make the sweater on Yarn Cakes LLC, I'm sure we all remember that there are certain numbers we have to work with in order to achieve this design, and those numbers I'm going to be displaying them on the screen for us to see. And for the armhole, I needed a number smaller than the least number that we were given, so I figured the difference between those numbers were 6. So what I did was to subtract 6 from 49, and that gave me 43, because I needed to work an 18-inch sleeve armhole. So now I'm just going to attach my yarn to the armhole, which is the body of the sweater. And if you recall that this armhole they're actually side stitches, so I needed to first even out those side stitches by working a single crochet stitches all the way around the armhole, so that I'm going to have a more defined edge before I begin working on the sleeve proper. So here I am trying to work 43 single crochets all the way around the armhole. Remember, you have to work with particular numbers, so you just have to figure out what number works for you. I'm working an 18-inch armhole, so I needed just 43 to achieve that, and I've gotten to the end of the armhole, and I'm about to work a slip stitch into the very first single crochet that I worked. So I'm just going to work my slip stitch right there, and then that's going to become our turning chain. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 1. Remember, our turning chain doesn't count, so once I work the turning chain, it means we are now left with a total of 42 stitches only, because the 43rd stitch is not going to count anymore. It's just going to be our turning chain. So into that second single crochet, I'm going to work my very first half double crochet, and I'm going to go ahead and keep working a half double crochet into each single crochet stitch all the way till I have a total of 42 half double crochet. Recall that the 43rd one has become a turning chain. So I'm going to work a total of 42 half double crochet all the way back to the end again. So I'm sure we're all familiar with this already. This was exactly what we did when we were working in the body of the sweater. So you just need to head up onto Yarn Cakes to watch the full tutorial. So I've worked my half double crochet all the way down, and I'm about to work in my very last half double crochet, which is the 42nd. And I'm just going to go ahead and close up the row by working a slip stitch into that turning chain. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some colored markers to indicate some very important points, like a first, second, and turning chain. So let's do that real quick before we go ahead. So this light green, or let me just say green stitch marker, is going to indicate our first stitch. The blue one is going to indicate a turning chain, while the pink one is going to indicate our last stitch. So this is going to make it less confusing for us. So we're just going to use that to indicate those key points. So let me just replace the initial stitch marker I was using with this one to mark the very first stitch. So now we have the green, the first stitch, the blue, the pink, the last stitch, and the blue, the turning chain. So after chaining one, remember to turn your work. Now we are not working in rounds, we are working back and forth, so you must always turn your work. And then we're going to work a second row of half double crochet from the very last stitch back to the first stitch. So working my first half double crochet into that last stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to fix the pink stitch marker back there to indicate that's our last stitch. So I'm going to work my second row of half double crochet all the way from the last stitch back to the first stitch, which is the green stitch marker. Okay, so I've worked my way all the way round, and I'm about working my very last half double crochet into that first stitch. Okay, so I worked my last half double crochet there, and I'm just gonna replace it, the green stitch marker to indicate that as our very first stitch. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish off this row by slip stitching into our turning chain, which is marked with the blue stitch marker. So I'm just going to work a slip stitch there to close up that row. Then I do my turning chain, I work my turning chain, and then I'm going to replace the stitch marker to indicate that, because it might get pretty confusing at first until you get a hang of it. So it's better to put stitch markers to indicate the different stitches. Okay, so now we're going to turn our work, and we're going to be working back from the first stitch back to the last stitch. And it's at this point that we begin to work our honeycomb design or pattern. I want to make sure that our honeycomb design is on the right side of our sleeve. So for those who may have watched the full tutorial on yarn cakes, you're basically just repeating everything that we did while working on the body of the sweater. The only major difference is the fact that we are working like in a circular pattern, although not fully circular, because we are working back and forth, unlike the body of the sweater when we were working from one end to another, and then we're turning our work, working on the wrong side, turning our work, flipping our work, working on the wrong side, flipping our work, working on the right side. It's very similar, except we are working on something round and not flat and straight. So you're just going to it's just a replica of the body, the design we worked on the body. So you're just going to repeat basically everything in the tutorial, in the full tutorial, and then you're just going to replicate it here on the sleeve. So I don't want to dwell too much or go too much into details because we already have a very detailed, tutorial on that. So I just want to show us how to work our sleeve from the body of the sweater, and I'm just going to one more time show you, how to finish up the row, and then always remember to turn your work to work on the half double crochet row. So I'm going to fast forward this a bit. Okay, so gotten to the I'm getting to the end of the row already. I've worked my honeycomb pattern from all the way back to the last stitch, and I'm just working my very last stitch now into that last stitch. So I walk into the last stitch with the pink stitch marker, and after this we're just going to work our slip stitch into the turning chain. That's the one with the blue stitch marker. We work our slip stitch there just to close up that row, and then we go ahead and also work our turning chain. I believe by now we're already getting a hang of this. Nothing so difficult, quite similar to what we did while working the body of a sweater. So we're going to be working from the last stitch back to the first stitch now, and remember to always flip your work, and the row will be working. The row you usually work from your last stitch to your first stitch is just the half double crochet row, which is the row that is going to be in the wrong side of our sleeve. So you're just going to work your half double crochet row now from the last stitch back to the first stitch. And when you get to the first stitch, you close up the row. You finish up the row by doing a slip stitch into the turning chain. You chain one, and then you begin to work your honeycomb design again from the very first stitch back to the last stitch. So this is all you have to do, work your way back to the first, from the first back to the last, from the last back to the first, just back and forth basically. So this way we're going to have our honeycomb design in the outer part of our sleeve, just like we have the honeycomb design on the right side of the body of our sweater. So that's it. I hope you're getting the hang of it. So now I'm just about to work that slip stitch. I'm about to close up the half double crochet row that I just worked from the last to the first stitch, and I'm just going to work that slip stitch into that turning chain. Oops. Okay, that's getting a little difficult, but I'm just gonna figure it out. Okay, so we're going to work our slip stitch into that turning chain. Then you go ahead and chain one, and then you flip your work and begin to work the honeycomb pattern from the first stitch all the way down to the last stitch again. Please remember to always flip your work. You're working back and forth and not round. It's very important. So now we go ahead with the next step of our honeycomb pattern. Like I said, it's just a repetition of what we did on the body of our sweater. So for full details on step by step, just head on to watch the full tutorial video. keep doing this off camera, and I'm going to continue working this till I get the desired length for the sleeve, and I'm going to come back to show you how I was able to work the cuffs. I think that's another very important thing I need to show you if you're working this method. Yeah, because you know, for the vertical one, everything was worked at once. So I think it's very important I show you how I was able to work the cuffs of the sleeve, you know, using this horizontal method. So here I'm just basically still working the honeycomb pattern, which is the, you know, front posts triple crochet, the front post triple crochet together, you know, just what we did in the body. So you can see the honeycomb pattern is beginning to, you know, show on our sleeves, and the more rows I do, you know, the more the honeycomb pattern shows. So I'm just gonna keep doing that, working back and forth, slip stitching into the turning chain, chaining one, flipping my work, working my half double crochet back from the last to the first stitch, you know, closing up the row by doing a slip stitch into that turning chain, chaining one, and then working a honeycomb pattern back from the first stitch marker to the last stitch marker. So that's just it, back and forth basically. And at the end of it all, you'll see your honeycomb pattern coming out beautifully and perfectly on the outer part of your sleeve, just like we have it on the body of the sweater. So you can see I've worked on one sleeve already, like I showed you at the beginning of the video, and you can see it came out perfectly, so beautifully. That is the cuff. So I'm going to come back to show you how to work the cuff. I'm just going to do the rest of this of my second sleeve off camera, and this is what you should be having at the end. So I hope you found this tutorial video helpful so far. I'll be seeing you soon. Okay, so now I've gotten the desired length of my sleeve, and I'm just going to switch from my 5mm to my 4mm hook to work on the cuff area. And so I lost a nail in the making of this video. Oops. Yeah, so back to our tutorial. I'm just going to start working a decrease row of single crochet together to give my sleeve that cinch look. So I'm just going to insert my hook in one stitch, pull through, insert into the next, pull through, and then yarn over and pull through all three. So that's how to work a single crochet together. I'm going to show us that one more time. So that's my first stitch now. So I'm inserting my hook into the next stitch and pulling through, insert into the next, pull through, a yarn over and pull through all three loops. So I'm just going to keep doing this repeatedly till I go from 24 stitches down to 20, from 42 stitches rather down to 21 stitches. So that's exactly half of what the actual sleeve size is. So I've gone all the way around, and I'm trying to work the last set of the single crochet together into my very last stitch, as you can see, the one with the pink stitch marker. So I'm just going to work my last set of single crochet together, and at the end of this row you will see that the base of our sleeve is looking, you know, cinch is looking smaller than the actual sleeve itself. So this has set the base for our cuff, because the cuff is usually smaller, as we all know. Yeah, so this is what it looks like. It's looking, you know, smaller. It's looking, yeah, you can see that it's looking kind of tighter than it was before. So now that we have that cinch effect, we can then go ahead with working our cuff. So to do that, I'm just going to mark that very last stitch as usual. So I'm just going to slip stitch into a turning chain like we've been doing to close off this single crochet decrease row. And from now on, I don't think I need the stitch marker anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and work my chains to the length of the cuff I want. I think I want about 2 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and work 8 chains from that base. I'm going to work 8 chains, and I'm going to work an extra 1 chain, and that's going to be our turning chain. So altogether I'm working 9 chains. The 9th one is just the turning chain. Okay, so now that we have that, we have to work our way back down to the base of the cuff by working a single crochet stitches. And okay, just note that I decided to use the single crochet method for my cuff, so you can go ahead and use the slip stitch method if that's what you want. So I've worked my single crochet all the way back down, and then I'm just going to go ahead now and work my very last single crochet, and measuring that, yeah, we have exactly 2 inches, just like I wanted. So I'm going to connect that row now to the base of the sleeve by working into the very first stitch with the green mark. I'm going to work a slip stitch to connect that second row that I just did to the base of my sleeve. So after connecting it, I can take out the stitch marker now. I don't think I'll be needing that anymore. And then into the very next available stitch, I'm going to, because we are working our way back up now, I have to first connect that third row to the third to my second, rather to the second stitch after the first stitch. So I've connected it with a slip stitch, and then I begin to work on the back loop only this time around. So I'm working back loop single crochet all the way up. Remember, you can use a slip stitch if that's what you want to use, but for this particular sweater I chose to use single crochet. So I'm working my back loop single crochet to give us that ribbed, pattern. I'm working it all the way back up again, and then when I work in my very last back loop single crochet, I'll go ahead and chain 1, and then begin to work my way back down again with back loop single crochets as well. So I'm chaining 1 right now, turning my work, and then I'm going to work all the way back down again. So when I get to the base, I'm going to attach that row that I just did down into the base of the sleeve. So I'm working a slip stitch into the next available stitch in the base of the sleeve. I'm going to work a slip stitch to connect that row to the sleeve, and then to work my way back up, I'm going to connect the row I'm about to work on to that. I'm connecting it now with a slip stitch, turn my work, and begin to work all the way up. So I've gone all the way around, and I've completed my rounds, and I'm just, what I'm doing right now is to stitch both ends together, and I'm using the outside loop slip stitch pattern. This is going to give you that ribbed and fine finishing closing. So how to do that, you're basically just going to pick the front loop of one end of the cuff and the back loop of the other end, and then you do a slip stitch. So I'm picking the front loop right now of this end, then I pick the back loop, I'm picking the back loop of the other end, and then slip stitch into everything. So that's the way to do the outside loop slip stitch. So this is going to give it that fine finishing rather. So it's going to have that ribbed effect, just like the back loop single crochet did all around the cuff. So just go ahead with picking the back loop, the front loop of one end, and the back loop of the other end, and working your slip stitch. I hope you're following and getting a hang of this. So I just did that all the way till I get to the very end, and then I finished up sewing both ends together with a slip stitch. I pull through, and then I cut my yarn. So that's basically how I was able to work my cuff on the horizontal sleeve pattern, and then that's it. I'm done sewing both ends together. Then I just cut my yarn and pull through. Then I'll go ahead, get my darning needle, and secure the loose ends together. So if I was a bit too fast with this part of the video, you can just go ahead and replay the video as many times as you need to, if you need to catch up on any part of it. So I believe this is pretty easy. It's very easy to work on. It has a very nice finishing to it and nice feel to it. So thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up, like and share, And also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I hope you found this video very useful and helpful. I guess I see you in my next video. Till then, bye.